All right, folks. I'm joined once again from who I like to call Obi-Wan Kenobi, Cliff High. Man, I appreciate you coming on, Cliff. There's a lot to talk about, and we're here in 2022. Like I've told everyone, I think this is going to be a nuclear winter. You've actually agreed with me on that, right?
It's good. Well, it depends on how you want to defend it. I don't like using or define it. I don't like using that term. I understand what you're saying. It's going to be emotionally loaded. I would agree with you. Right?
That's what I mean. I don't mean
Yeah.
like nuclear war. I'm saying like
Yeah. But
like
see,
it's going
there's the problem is that we are in a war. So we've got
right.
to understand, it could escalate to that.
Right, and I'm going to read this to you from, and I know you did a show with Patel Patriot, correct?
Yeah.
About devolution, and
Yeah.
I spoke to Juan about that. He says, "Man, that's just this kid is just amazing. The whole it's not even a theory; it's actually a component of the plan." But he said that it holds a lot of water. But this is his quote, and I have Juan's quote here. Devolution is a component, but it's one of the options. The options all look similar. It's like a football game. A team has multiple plays. The concept of devolution is fabulous, but it's still an option play. We are in a continuity in government moment. We've suffered a digital attack. We are fighting back in a situation where we have captured operations within our government. Anyone who thinks Biden or Pelosi is in control, then close Gitmo. There are safeties in place. People ask, what's the delay? We need the population to understand what's happening. There are absolutely going to be casualties of war.
I agree. No question.
So he's not saying devolution is wrong. He's agreeing with it. He's just saying there's actually safeties in place where devolution is part of the process, I guess.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, so my encounter with devolution was as a theory supporting the idea, which was new at the time, of continuity of government. Okay, continuity of government was something that originated in like the late 40s, early 50s. And so devolution was simply a method or one of the methods that continuity of government might come about. But basically, it was a theoretical category kind of understanding, because bear in mind, if the US had been attacked, in my day and age, they would have these duck and cover drills when you were a little kid, right? And you duck under your school desk as though that would protect you from a nuclear bomb going off just down the road. But it was that kind of goofy situation. But had we been attacked with nuclear weapons, it would have instantly led to devolution in order to support continuity of government. See, so that's just the application of that term, and it would have had nothing to do with what we're currently in. It wouldn't have resembled what we're currently in at all. So I think of that word in a much broader sense. I don't think of it as a strict protocol. And so what Patel Patriot is doing is he has he's like trying to provide the supporting building blocks in order that we might see a structure. He's not attempting to discard things in order to build a particular structure, right? So he uses the term devolution in a general sense the same way I do. You have to devolve from your traditional government to a continuity of government state. That act is devolution. How you do it and what you do it depends on what causes that devolution, right?
Right, and that's what we're in right now. The Congress, the Supreme Court, the presidency is all a captured operation. So that's why, and I agree with Patel Patriot 100%. I'm just saying that Juan wanted to add more to add more of the ingredients to the recipe. I guess I don't. He's saying that it's like a football team, an NFL football team. They have multiple plays going at, that they choose from. But devolution is the broader sense of all of this, I guess. I mean, that's what he's saying. But how's your data? I mean, are you able to look at data anymore, or is it completely gone bunk because of the censorship? Is there any?
So I get numerics. Because the emotional components of language don't change, all right? So certain language has high emotional values and so on, and we continue to use that sort of language all the time. So I get these building and release tension values, but I am not getting an accurate set of linguistics attached to those relative to the sets. So I get a spike saying, oh, we're going to have a big emotional something occur around January 22nd, and it'll last for a number of days. But other than a few scattered bits and pieces here and there that I think are reasonably reliable, I don't rely on any of it because of the censorship.
Yeah, I got you. And that was going to bring me to my next question, because Juan actually had a question for you. I just spoke to him today on the phone. I have his interview after yours. And I was like, hey, I'm going on with Cliff High. Is there any questions you want me to ask Cliff? And I'll read this for you. Before this is all over, we're going to have something like the Cuban Missile Crisis. He's saying that some kind of event is going to happen. We certainly had the Zero Hedge article stating that something like the Cuban Missile Crisis is happening in the Ukraine. The Russians are saying to Ukraine, where do you believe the crisis will actually occur related to who's actually in charge of the U.S. nuclear operation? So that's what's going to some kind of Cuban Missile Crisis needs to transpire to where we see who's really in charge of the nuclear operation in America. And he's saying there's conflict in Taiwan, the Mideast, and Ukraine. What does your data show? What is your data showing?
Okay, so if I had to pick a location, which is just dodgy as hell, Guy, absolutely dodgy as hell.
I understand.
Okay, I would say at that corner of the planet where we get the joining of Kashmir with India, China, and Tibet, Nepal, that region right there. Okay, the Hindu Kush area. Okay, so that's where I think we're most likely to spark. All right, the emotional values and the little tiny bits of data that I get suggest that it in order of occurrence, it would be there and then Taiwan and then someplace north of China, but China is going to be central to it. So that's just what we're going to end up with. I suspect that we'll get some kind of a skirmish between the People's Liberation Army of China on their side of the border and the Indian troops on their side of the border, and that'll escalate to the point where those two nations are ready to go at it with each other. How real that will be, I don't know. The Hindus, it's awful hard to push on them because they get instantly hard, and so they don't react the way other cultures do. But I suspect there more than any of the more obvious places. You know, no one was looking at Cuba when the Cuban Missile Crisis occurred, right?
Right.
So in that sense, we're not looking to where it will arise.
Got you. So, but we could be pretty confident in your opinion. You know, I know we don't have a crystal ball, but I would say we're pretty confident that 2022, a conflict is going to arise. Wouldn't you say?
We're already in a conflict.
So, well, I mean, it's going to be hypertension, like in Taiwan. I mean, I always say, I say Taiwan, China is going to make a move on Taiwan this year. Is what I think.
And they probably would like that to some extent. But see, if you get into the minutia and you start thinking about what's their motivation and so on, you get one set of conclusions that are not in line with the broad brush. So if we say China wants to take over Taiwan, they keep threatening and so on, we say, well, why the hell haven't they done it? There's been dozens of opportunities in the last 20 years, and they could have done it a lot easier then. And it's because they don't want to do it, right? It's a problem for them. So it's the same kind of problem that they faced with Hong Kong, only they were obligated to deal with Hong Kong at that time because it was the expiration of the contract between the British government and the Chinese government in 1999 that turned Hong Kong back to them. And Hong Kong has been nothing but a pain in the ass to China ever since. They used to have a nice cooperative relationship where Hong Kong laundered all this money for China. Now that China is in charge of Hong Kong, they've got all of the riots, the freedom stuff, all of their money thing went to hell. They've got a new population that's causing them more problems than the other populations they're trying to suppress. So do they want to take on another population like Taiwan, with this time with guns and bullets and stuff? No, I think it's a lot of bluster. I think that it is good for the Chinese to have Taiwan there such that the CCP can always stand up and rally the troops. We're going to go take back Taiwan. And then they plan and it never happens, right? And so
they run military exercises. Why would they even be doing that? Just for intimidation purposes?
No, well, okay, so for intimidation purposes, so lots of reasons. Okay, so there's never just one reason. For intimidation purposes, to send a message to us, to send messages to people in Africa that we're strong, China can dominate, blah, 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 all of these kind of things, because the Belt and Road Initiative in Africa is going all to hell. And so there's many different agendas going on, but none of them actually would necessarily lead to an invasion. Bear in mind that here's the thing. The PLA, the People's Liberation Army, has not been tested in modern times. All right. We lost 50,000 plus Americans in Vietnam, and then we had the Gulf War tests. And so we've got troops that are reasonably battle hardened. Okay. China does not. They have riot police, and that's basically it. So the PLA is not working out the way that the CCP wants. The CCP does not control the People's Liberation Army. They nominally tell them what to do the same way Biden nominally tells our military what to do. And sometimes the PLA does it, right? But the PLA, in their last encounter with the Indian troops, where the PLA was armed with sticks with nails through them and all this kind of thing, and the Indian troops had nothing, they were surprised. The Indian troops got initially pushed over a cliff, and a lot of them died. And then when the Indian troops came back, they just cleaned the floor with the PLA, right? And so it has gotten so bad for the Chinese that they can't trust their own soldiers to patrol in Tibet. So they've had to put in machine gun loaded drones and put them in control of people way the hell back somewhere, right? So this is a sign of the weakness of China, because those kind of strategies mean you can't control, you don't trust your own people, and all of those things are essentially weak, all the technology, right? A good grenade with sufficient electrical capacitors around it could take out dozens of those drones in a little mini EMP. So there's all the different kinds of ways to disable such things. The Chinese know it, but it means that they're forced to do it. So look at it this way, Guy. The Chinese army is so strong and the CCP is so much in control of them, and they've got an army with 200 million men. 200 million men. 2/3 of our population is in their army. And they've got to put robots and drones in little tiny Tibet.
Yeah.
So they're not as strong as they would have you believe, right? And so they know Sun Tzu, they practice deception. And so they want to win without fighting. That's the same way that our globalists want to do it. They want to win without fighting through intimidation, to force you to take stuff you don't want. And but they have no legal authority to do it. And if you simply stand up and say no, they can't do anything to you. And you will win if you get into a court case with them. But they're trying to do it just by bluster, by saying we're all powerful.
Propaganda. Well, they own all of the.
Exactly.
They own all the propaganda. So that's another tool they're using, is the propaganda. Hollywood.
That's their only tool, actually, if you look at it. They only have that. The globalists. CCP has weapons, but so here's what's happening. Okay, going to Juan's point. All right, so I don't think of us being in devolution the way that Patel does. Patel thinks of it, I think, as like a protocol. And like the military is going to do this, and then they're going to do that. And so I know, having been in the military for 17 years, that it is true that, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. So I think we're in, this is going to sound really goofy,
no,
but I think we're running the same playbook as George Soros. George Soros ran and paid for all those color revolutions, right? All over the planet, destroying everything, turning these countries into shitholes, trying to do it to Ukraine and all this kind of stuff. And he's trying to do it to Russia. And that's why Russia's pissed, and that's why they're putting their troops on the border with Ukraine. But what I think is going on is that our self-organizing collective of people here in the United States is using the same kind of playbook, the same sorts of mechanisms, because they work. They're social engineering mechanisms. Soros has perfected them. And we're doing a color revolution, only we're doing a tricolor revolution. Okay, so we're going for the red, white, and blue to have a revolution here that's going to put. So it's just beautiful. I mean, it is.
But you're not talking about, we're not running a revolution to where we have to have civil unrest in the streets and a civil war. We don't want that. I mean,
no, we don't.
We're trying to avoid that.
We don't have to be that stupid, right? We don't have. Right, they're going to do that because we're doing it against them. That's their only. Okay, so. We're dealing with people that are essentially sociopaths and psychopaths. Okay.
Right.
And that is, they're sort of like bullies. All right. So they're not very smart. They have a few tricks. They're clever and manipulative. But when it comes to fighting, they don't know how to fight really. Okay, so they only have these manipulative, sneaky, underhanded kind of tricks. And so if you're aware of their tricks and you don't fall for them in a fight, they essentially always lose because they are so limited. And that's what we're dealing with. There's just a lot of them, and they've been able to squirrel their way into power, and they're manipulating our system against us. But as people wake up, they get to the point where they say, okay, I understand we've got a corrupted legal system. Okay. And so I will take different tracks in trying to get my goal through that legal system. One thing being that, the legal system is captured, but you can still overwhelm their system, use their system against them because it's basically our system. So if thousands, and it wouldn't even take that. If hundreds of people in any given state all decided to do pro se lawsuits for theirself, no attorneys, because that gives you an entirely different view of the legal system, and it draws so much more resources your way you wouldn't believe. But if you were to file legal suits and you had 100 people all filing on the same subject against the same people, not a class action, just 100 individual ones, you're going to draw attorneys for one that will then create class actions, but you're going to just drown the legal system of that county and then ultimately that state, and it will collapse. But they can't allow it to collapse, so they will accede to your wishes, even though it is a corrupted court and that judge is corrupt. He will be told to do the stand-up thing. And so just as we see that they tried to totally shut down the Ghislaine Maxwell thing, but they ended up with the guilty verdict because they had to assuage the people's knowledge that she was indeed guilty. They've got to get that out there. And then they're trying to cover it all up like mad, right? So this is the kind of thing that we're dealing with, is people that are bullies. If you stand up to them, you find that they don't have a whole lot of swings in their repertoire, right? They only have, they're a one-trick pony, really. So that's what we've got to deal with. But the problem is, at this moment, is that most people on the planet don't know that we're at war. And it's not just the United States, right? Australia's captured New Zealand, France, England, Canada. You just keep naming the countries all the way.
Let me ask you this: do you think the deep state that controls America also controls China, and that is why they're trying to propel us into a war with China? This is all part of the master plan.
Exactly so, Guy.
Because I've heard. What's your thoughts on the cargo ships? They're being held out in sea. I've read a few articles that there could be missiles in the containers.
Sure, I agree with certainly that. Buy that. Yeah, well, here's the thing. Okay, so there are cargo ships. They're being held offshore. There's any number of reasons that this could be the case, including legal and economic reasons, right? So we're at war, but the current resident and the Democrats refuse to deal with that war because they're on the side of the people we're at war with, the Chinese.
Right, we've been successfully infiltrated.
Yeah, but beyond that, okay, so to hell with the infiltration. We were attacked with a bioweapon. This is a quiet war. So here's our problem.
All right, be careful with the words you use here, because I want to put this on YouTube.
Okay, so I understand. So it's an issue of proportion. Okay, so when Pearl Harbor was attacked, we get this kind of emotional thing, right? So this is 1941, and this is the attack on Hawaii and Midway and the Philippines and all of that. In one short day, it started sweeping across the United States from the west to the east coast. By the end of 24 hours later, 30% of the population had heard of it in the United States. 2 days later, it was 40% and so on, because we didn't have instant communications the way we do now. But it took like only a couple of weeks, and we had been attacked. It is as though everybody had been punched into the face. Okay, more people have died from this attack by the CCP than died in that attack. And what do we have for emotions relative to the war? That's it. In 20 to the fact that we had been attacked.
Jeez.
deliberately. And you see my point, right? Nobody in our population. So in like a couple of weeks, everybody in the US in 1941 was getting ready for war.